Well done in making it this far through the challenge. You managed to secure shelter as your number 1 priority. You managed to get clean drinking water as your number 2 priority. And now it's on to food as your number 3 priority. Food is difficult to secure in the wild. A sustainable source of food is particularly difficult. And knowledge is very important when it comes to foraging for food. If you have a source of fresh water, and if there's fish in that fresh water, then over 96% of species of freshwater fish are edible. So that's a good place to start. What we're going to do in this challenge, I'm going to show you how to build a simple fish trap out of a plastic bottle. So this is our little plastic bottle. As you can see, I've cut off the nose and turned it inside out to make the entry point over there where fish can swim through. And once they swim through past that nozzle, they get dazed and confused and they get caught into this middle section. And that will serve as our fish trap. I've also secured this ends with some wooden toggles or spikes, and I'll run you through that. That just prevents this part from slipping out under the pressure of water wherever you may set this particular trap. So this, once you get your fish, this could be a source of food, but it can also be a source for bait fish. And to move forward into trying to catch bigger pieces of or bigger fish, we can try and get into a gorge hook. And that's a hook that we whittle out of wood that we have over here. So the shape of it is like a enlarged grain of rice. It's got a tapered end at each end, and I managed to just take a single strand from our paracord to secure it. So what happens is we're going to set our bait on this hook or gorge hook, which will be in that direction. So the fish or the crab or whatever may be will be in that direction. And the idea is that the fish swallows this whole, and once it gets into the fish's throat and we pull on, and you pull on the one end, it'll actually spin around like that, and it actually gets stuck in the fish's belly or in the fish's throat. This hook is not a catch and release system. It will essentially kill the fish. So when it comes to food in the survival situation, that's what you're looking for. So this is not a sports fishing hook where you're looking to catch and release and test it out. Whatever you catch is something that you're going to end up eating, unless it's a poisonous fish, of course. So the options of making this particular gorge hook will be out of wood. It's quite easy to whittle out of wood. Another option is that you can make it out of bone, which is probably the more primitive and traditional way of making it. So I've made one out of bone. You can see over here. It takes a lot longer to make because the bone is a lot harder than wood, and it is just more time consuming. The benefit of the bone is that the edges, you can get to quite a sharp point, so it will grab inside of the fish a lot firmer than the wood would, and it's also a lot stronger, the bone. So you can try making the bone, and I'll run through on how to do that with you as well. So that's what we're going to look forward to in this part of our survival challenge. I look forward to going through these steps with you, and I just hope that you get excited in being able to not only be in the wilderness, but be able to thrive in the wilderness. So let's get started, and I'll take you through those challenges, and I'll take you through each of these steps so that you can do this on your own. Okay, so the next step we're going to move on to is that we're going to try and whittle a gorge hook, something similar to this that I've already made, and we're going to make one of these out of this stick. The wood that you choose has to be quite strong. This is a Banksia branch, which is nice and strong, easy to whittle, and will hold for that size of wood. So what we want to do is we just want to try and whittle this end over here to a point. Okay, so we've got that to a point now, and if you watch what I was doing, I was always pushing the blade away from me, so there's no cutting towards you. Try and keep that blade away. So I've got that one point. I guess the stick might be as long as to that point over there where my finger is. I'll make it when I cut the wood, I think I'll make it a bit longer, so I've got some wood that I can still shave off. So the way I'm going to break this is by rolling my knife onto that part and just keep rolling, and the blade will cut into the wood, so when we break it, it doesn't splinter off too much. So I'll just roll that in, and you can see that the cut mark over there. We'll try and make it quite deep. Again, the blade is being pushed away from you, and if there's any slip, it just goes straight into our wooden block. Okay, so we'll break that off. See it, by practicing that technique or using that, it breaks off nice and easily and cleanly, so that we don't get those splintering fingers. So the next step is just to whittle the other end to that sharp point. Okay, so we've got our sharp point on this side, and now we just need to thin this out and get it to a sleeker line, because essentially the fish needs to swallow this in its mouth from that direction, so we don't want it to be too thick. If you watch what I was doing when I was whittling this particular end, I wasn't holding it and pushing it that way. It's probably a little bit too small, a little bit too flimsy. It just makes work easier if I put that end down and then cut towards the chopping block over here. So we'll keep that technique going. Knife skills is important to develop, and it keeps you safe, keeping those edges away from you. Okay, I might flip this around. So the size of hook that you make has to be proportionate to the type of fish that you're wanting to catch. There are some fish that have a particularly broad mouth. They would be like catfish and bottom feeder fish. And this would quite easily be swallowed by a catfish. And there's catfish all over the world throughout our freshwater systems. Can't say it's the tastiest piece of fish, but it is great in a survival situation. Okay, so I think I'll keep this length, thinking that this might be targeted for catfish. So I've got the whittled ends. I can just sharpen that piece off. Okay, so that's a sharp end over there. We can sharpen this end. And the final step that we have is to make the groove in the middle where the cord will hold so it doesn't slide off. So to make that, it's quite similar technique that I had when I cut the stick. I'm going to put our gorge hook down on a firm surface. and instead of keeping the knife perpendicular, I'm going to angle it and roll, so making an angled cut. Around, and then we just repeat that process on the other side, angling it. So essentially what is happening is that the V cut is cutting into the wood in that direction. Okay, so there we have it. This is where the paracord can hold. Quite similar to the way I tied it over there. We can tie this in and we can make a fishing knot. And I'll just illustrate. There we go. So you can see how it's tied in, and when this pulls, it is unlikely to slip off. Okay, so there we have it. A gorge hook, crafted out of wood. It's quite simple and easy. The next one I'll show you is how to make one out of bone. It takes much longer, but if you are interested in making that, watch out for the next clip. Okay, so in this clip we are going to be making, or I'm going to show you how to make a gorge hook out of bone. So that is a gorge hook that I made out of bone. It was just a piece of beef bone that I got from the butchers. The butcher cut it up and the dogs ate out the marrow, and this has just been dried out. So the outer cortex of the bone is quite hard, and that is the part that we can make into different kinds of tools. This is a primitive technique, so it is something that is awesome just to practice and see what you can make out of simple things that we find along the bush. It might be a bone of a carcass that an animal has taken down, and we can use that for different things. So the end product is something like this, and what we need to do is either cut a slice of the bone, and we can use our a multi-tool for that. That's probably the best and easiest way to do it, and I guess the safest way that I would recommend. So if we had a multi-tool, and I've got a Leatherman over here, it's got a saw to it, then that is what you're gonna this is what you can use just to cut that, to cut the slice of bone off. If you don't have a Leatherman and you're out in the wilderness and in a survival situation, the next option is trying to gather shards of bone that might be around the carcass. So this is just an example of a shard that may be laying around, and while I got the shard, I will show you how we can shape this into a gorge hook. So we're going to find a rock of some kind, and we're going to want to scrape and just slowly abrade, essentially sand this into shape. Having some water is handy just to lubricate the surface. So this is a slow process, and I'm going to be going for that conical sharp edge shape. That's what we're going for, and just rubbing it along that rock. If you are uncomfortable using your hands, I'll probably just recommend, if you've got a shard of bone and you're using this at home, wear some protective gloves. I'm used to doing this, so I'm happy enough to do it without gloves. But if you're doing this for the first time, these shards, these ends are quite sharp, so it can cut into you. So please wear your protective gloves as well as protective eyewear. So So that is the idea of slowly carving out a gorge hook out of bone. Step that into the water. So it's smoothed out on this surface already. That pointy end is quite sharp. And I guess the next part I'm going to be working on is this end. Okay, so there we have our rough shape of our gorge hook, and the next step is to make that V cut around here, so that is where our cordage will hang onto the hook. So to do that, we need a sharper piece of rock, and I've got this piece of rock over here, so I'll swap out our rock. And what we're going to do is we're going to rub the corner portion of this rock over here against the bone, and that will give us a nice little cut where we can attach the cord. Okay, so there we have our gorge hook. We've got the sharp points on either end. We've got a groove where we can wrap our cord. In this case, we're going to use a strand of the paracord. You could also use natural cordage, which is, a truly primitive technique. But there you have it. Rough and ready, but effective. If you do practice using this, please remember to use gloves and protective eyewear.